When it comes to worship tone, gear can be overwhelming. Buying gear can be overwhelming. We're talking hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars just to get a reasonable tone for church. To me, that's unreasonable. But what if I told you there was a way to get really amazing tone for your guitar, for your church, that sits in a mix well, that's under $200 for a product? That's where this guy comes in. And I'm telling you, this thing rocks. So why in the world make a video about the Boss GT-1 in a market where Line 6, Helix, HX Stomp, you name any modeler that is just really great, like the Pod Go, for instance. There's so many modelers in the market right now that are dominating the worship scene, but sometimes people in church or worship leaders just don't have the cash to make ends meet when it comes to buying a Pod Go, when it comes to buying an HX Stomp. The main things that really a lot of people like are expensive. And the Boss GT-1 is $200, sometimes even cheaper if you can find it on Reverb or Facebook Marketplace, anywhere local. Sometimes I've seen them as low as $100 if you're lucky. And that's a really big value point for people who really aren't made of money. And by people who aren't made of money, I mean worship leaders operating on a church budget and worship volunteers who often just don't have the cash at their disposal to get things like the Line 6 Helix, or name your modeler here. So the purpose of this video is to, number one, encourage those of you that are looking for a modeler that need to get one that's in a budget line. I want to encourage you to get the Boss GT-1, hands down. It is a phenomenal unit with a lot of potential. The only problem with the unit is that it takes some skill to dial in the tone that's actually usable in a worship scenario. Most of the presets, if none of them, if that's the way you say it, none of them are really usable for worship scenarios. Either they're too hot in the gain area, or they're too trebly, they're too bassy, and really some of those things are subjective to each player. But from my perspective, there's nothing in the unit that came stock in the presets that really stuck with me and said, yeah, I can use that in a worship scenario. I had to tweak some stuff. I had to figure out, hey, what is this thing capable of? And I started building my own patches. So in lieu of keeping this unit that is $200 as a value point for worship leaders, I've kind of made this value proposition on my own to say, hey, I can build you a patch that gets you on a good starting point with worship tone. And each patch that I've developed here is essentially designed to get you to the right point in terms of amp choice, in terms of delay, in terms of reverb, in terms of drive, gain staging, things like that. Lining that stuff up and putting it in a patch so that you can have a reasonable starting point with this unit. That way you don't have to jump in and buy a $200 unit and come with the cost of actually having to tweaking it yourself. And you're welcome to do that, absolutely. This is always subjective. But for those of you who are really on a tight budget and need some help with dialing in tone, my all-in-one tone packages are essentially what that's for. And that's what you've heard in the video so far, and what we'll demo some more here in just a few seconds. Alright, so that was the all-in-one Worship Basics patch set for the Boss GT-1. Again, if you're looking to buy a modeler that's under $200, whether that's for the purpose of I just don't want to have an amp, or I can't afford an amp, or I can't afford a multi-effects unit like anything like Line 6 Quad Cortex, whatever, and it doesn't matter what kind of person you are, volunteer, worship leader, whatever it is, the Boss GT-1 is a phenomenal product. And if you need help shaping the tone at a pretty reasonable price, the all-in-one Worship Basics patch set that I've got in the description below is there to download if you want to try it out. Again, those sounds that you heard is essentially all of that package. So all of those sounds are designed for you to use in nearly any worship scenario that you're going to run into. Most worship scenarios are dictated by the clean tone with the delay and the reverb sort of thing. You're going to need some drive every once in a while. You'll need a lead tone like that octave lead that we showed. And it's always nice to have a chorus clean and drive in there. The vibrato's nice. So many different options to use that can give you a wide assortment of tonality that bring really, really good depth to you as a player, but to your team as well, with very minimal hassle and very minimal cash. That's fantastic. So if that's what you're interested in, check that out. But if you want to stick around, I've actually figured that there's a couple of secrets to this unit that I prefer to make this unit a little more usable for me. Mostly in the context of using it like a pedal board, an effects pedal board. In an effects pedal board, you have your different pedals with their different switches to turn them on and off. And you can actually do that with all three of the main buttons on the unit at the sacrifice of the tuner and the looper. So if you're interested in that, I'll include some additional information here as to how I set up my patches to allow for more access to my feet. So I can have access to turning effects on and off with my feet, or doing the volume pedal and the tap tempo all in one particular patch. So if you're interested in taking a look at that, there's a segment coming up about how to set up your unit for that way. But if you still want the tuner on the unit, if you still want the tuner active, or if you want the looper active, the patches below will be included as standalone. So if you have a patch that's clean, your clean patch will be just there, and you can switch your preset to go to drive, or you can switch your preset and then go to whatever you wish. But in the way that I do it, I orient my patches around a clean tone, for example, and then the 3 buttons gauge 3 different stages of that same preset. So within that preset, I can turn a drive on, or I can turn a chorus on, or both of them on, and still have access to the tap tempo with those 3 buttons. The secret sauce there is you can tell the unit to still switch presets by pressing the 2 buttons that turn the tuner on, and instead of turning the tuner on, it'll change the preset. The same can be said for the looper. So if you're interested in that, stick around. Otherwise, check out the patch. Hopefully it's helpful. All right, regarding the unit itself, I was really drawn to this unit for a couple reasons. One of the biggest ones was because of this control button can be associated with any type of effect parameter. You can associate it to turn an overdrive on, a mod on, a reverb on, or off, or whatever. But I really love that you can associate this to be a delay tap tempo, which I have associated with every single patch that I've developed here. Additionally, the Boss GT-1 stock, without any editing, has these 2 buttons set up as a preset changer. You go down with a preset on this one, obviously, and you go up with a preset on this one. However, in all of my patches that I've built, I find it more versatile to have these buttons not change the preset, but rather turn an overdrive or an effects modification on. So in this case, this patch has an overdrive on, and you can see that it's turning it on here just by this, and it's not switching the preset. The same is said here. In this case, it's a vibrato, as I've labeled in the preset title, but it's not changing the preset, it's turning that vibrato or mod on and off. Now I find this highly valuable, especially when it comes to effect spillover. When you change a preset and you have a lot of reverb and delays going on, they immediately cut right off if you're doing the preset changes frequently. So I love having these effects available to me to mitigate that. Now you can't avoid it altogether, but you can mitigate it through this strategy. But the big question is, number one, how do we set this up so that you can have these
already changed, which that is answered by the presets that I have in my patches here. They're already set up to change these back and forth, so you shouldn't have any problem with that. But the next question is, how do you switch your presets if these are effect modifications, or not effect modifications, they're toggles for overdrives and effects. So the main way you set this up so that you can still change presets is by doing a couple things. First, you're going to go to menu, which is right here. You press this menu button. And most of the time, your device starts on output, and you're going to scroll the first number one scroll wheel here to play. You're going to hit enter after that, and you're going to be met with a couple switches here that you don't need to touch. So don't touch any of the knobs here. Hit enter again, and it turns the page. And what you're going to see is that it has this function for down, up, or I should say, yeah, down, up, and up in control 1. So what this is saying is the down, up button normally is associated with a tuner. So if you press both of these at the same time, you see that tuner function is there. You can switch the functionality of this to say, instead of tuner, sorry, it went out of focus there. Instead of tuner, you can tell it to go, so it'll look like this, but you can tell it to go memory down, which means it'll change your preset down. The same can be said for the up and control 1, which is both of these at the same time. Stock, that means it's turning the loop on if you don't adjust anything. So originally it'll look like this. And if you hit this, it'll turn the looper on. With my presets, I don't think the looper's that functional, especially in a worship scenario. It's just not. So to avoid or actually to get full functionality out of the unit, I like the idea of making sure that this is preset up or memory +1. So again, the down up is memory down 1, and the up control is now memory up 1 +1. So I'm gonna hit exit after I set this up, and what happens is I can still have my preset set up to turn on these devices, or I should say overdrives and effects in that preset, but when it's time to switch, I hit both of these to go preset down, and as you can see, the preset's changed to now a chorus. So now I have an overdrive here and a chorus pedal here, whereas previously I had a vibrato in this preset. So you can go back and forth and still have a lot of flexibility with minimal spillover. Again, spillover isn't completely avoidable, but it is somewhat avoidable if you set your device up this way. So keep in mind, all of my presets, I prefer to have the unit set up this way. But in the patch offering, I'll include just the presets with an ability for you to just change these up and down like normal if that's the way you prefer. If you prefer to do it the way that I do it, I'll label them as Stomp. If you prefer it preset-wise and you just want to change the channels, I'll make sure to label them preset.
All right, guys, a couple closing comments. Hope these patches are helpful. If you choose to download them, just make sure to recognize which kind of patch that you're putting into your unit. If you prefer your unit to work like it normally does with the preset up and down, you'll want to use the preset patches, preset labeled patches. If you want to do the pedal board stomp board mode, as I showed you in the previous segments, or at least showed you how to set it up that way, you'll find out pretty quickly the pedal board patches won't let you change the presets unless you do what I did before in the previous segment. So if that's what you want to do, make sure you just, those are the two different files. So if you want to switch them back and forth, try them out, go for it. Just make sure the pedal board mode is followed up with that instruction that you saw previously. Additionally, make sure your output settings on the unit is set to line out. And then like you did with the previous segment, you go into the menu and you can scroll to the play option. There's an output option there before that too. So you're gonna want to go in there and make sure that that output is labeled to line out or headphones sort of idea. We don't want it to go to a cab. If you have it going through a cab already, you're welcome to do that. But just know that the patches have been developed with a line out scenario, as most churches really benefit from the idea of just plugging straight into the unit as a DI and going to the mixer. Additionally, this is the last comment. If you're not familiar with how to put the patches into the unit itself, there's some great videos on looking up how to download the software for the Boss GT-1 and how to take patches from the internet and putting it on your unit that is required for these particular patches. So if you're not familiar with that, just look up on YouTube on how to do it. It's a pretty simple procedure. You just have to make sure you have the right software tools on your computer, which are completely free from the Boss website. And make sure you have a USB connector cable for your unit. So those are the main things. I hope these patches are helpful. I hope this video has been helpful, even if you don't do the patches. But if you're looking for that starter tone, that starting point for an entry-level modeler like this one, this is a great way to go. And I just hope that it gets you in a position to where your tone is not only benefiting you as a player, but benefiting your church as well. So, thanks so much.